On today's show, the Cavs wrapped up their West Coast road trip with a win over the Blazers on Tuesday night. Darius Garland was brilliant, and we'll talk about everything that happened in Portland on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor as we get started here. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe. And hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. The Cleveland Cavaliers won their second game in a row on Tuesday night as they beat the Portland Trail Blazers 122-111. This was, I thought, a really nice win for the Cavs. I thought there were positive things to talk about on both ends of the floor. And I do think that as we get into this, I think it's important that they won this game. And the game against Utah on Sunday, which obviously snapped a season worst 4-game losing streak, was a game that the Cavs, I think, were always going to win. Like, they could have overslept the opening tip-off and still found a way to win that game because Utah just has no interest in playing NBA basketball right now. And the Cavs took control of that game and won. But, like, it wasn't some, oh, that was an impressive win or they really showed us something. Yes, there were reasons to be encouraged. I think that was a game that certainly fixed the vibes a little bit. And you saw the Cavs take command of a game that they kind of had not been able to do lately. But Portland's a good team. And I know that their record is what their record is, but since January 19th, and if you listen to the Locked On Cavs whip around earlier this week, you know this. Since January 19th, they've been a playoff caliber basketball team. They're not going to be confused with OKC or Boston or the Cavs or even teams like Indiana, but they've been much better than I think their record for the full season shows because of how bad they were at the start of the season. So for the Cavs to finish off a 5-game, 10-day road trip against arguably the best team, I mean, probably the Clippers are ahead of them, but you certainly think that considering how good Portland's been lately, Portland's better than the Kings. I think they're better than the Suns, who did have a really nice win on Monday night over Milwaukee, too. They are, light years better than Utah. Like, this was, I think, a pretty solid test, especially coming off of a game over Utah where, yeah, it gave them reason to feel good, but I think there were still questions about the losing that they had been doing lately. So I came away impressed with what the Cavs were able to do on both ends of the floor. And defensively, I thought Evan Mobley was absolutely fantastic in this game. Going to talk about him coming up in a little bit. I thought Jerome off the bench, who had 25 points on 15 shots in 20 minutes. I thought he was great in this game. But this needs to start with Darius Garland, because Garland has, as you know, if you listen to this podcast, or maybe it's your first time, and if so, welcome. But if you just watch the Cavs, Darius Garland has not been playing his best basketball since that fall against the New York Knicks right after the All-Star break, and then he missed the next 2 games, came back for the game against Boston. But since then, has not necessarily been the all-star version of Darius Garland. The shooting's been down. There was a stretch where his floater was off significantly. He didn't look like the guy that made the all-star team this year. He didn't look like the guy that I think has built a case to at least be talked about as an all-NBA selection this year. Well, on Tuesday night in Portland, he looked like that guy and more. Like, I thought that this was one of the best games that Garland played all year. And I do think, one, it's important because Donovan Mitchell was out. And I talked on yesterday's show a little bit about how I thought that this was a good opportunity for Garland to get right, because he'd have a little bit more usage. Like the load that he would have to carry in this game was naturally going to be higher than it has been when Mitchell's on the floor. And that's just the way that things work. And I thought that Darius did a great job of taking advantage of that. Like Toumani Camara, who's a great defender for the Blazers. I'm not sure if he's played enough games to qualify for all defense, but he's that caliber of defender. Like he is one of the probably 15 best defenders in basketball. And he spent a lot of time covering Garland, whether it was that was his assignment or as the result of a switch. But he spent a lot of time on Garland on Tuesday night, and Darius cooked him all night. Like, yeah, there were a couple of times where Kamani got him. But Darius just absolutely, I thought, roasted him. Like, I thought that Darius dominated that matchup. And that to me was the thing that stood out because Darius did so much of his damage. And his final line was 27 points on 19 shots. But he did so much of his damage inside the 3-point arc. He only took 3 threes. He only made one of them. That is, of course, not high enough for Darius at his peak. But with how Darius has been shooting lately, I actually thought that this was awesome to see him try and get to the basket more, to get to that floater range. And that was really, really working for him against Portland. That's what I think stood out to me is like, I think you feel better about this game from Darius because of the way that he got his points, as opposed to, yeah, he just hit like 6 threes and he had a good game in the box score because he hit a bunch of shots from deep. But I don't know that you would have necessarily felt better about the way that he was trending. And I do think that over the last couple of games, outside of his long range shooting, I do think Darius has been trending in the right direction. I think that this is sort of the result of the way that he's been playing lately. And I think that this is a really, really good sign for the Cavs. I think it's a good sign they won this game as they return home. And I think it's a good sign they won this game because of Darius Garland, because Darius is most likely, I mean, on any game, he can be the best player on the team. But for the Cavs to win the title, Darius is not going to be the best player the Cavs have. Like, if he is their best player, I don't think they're winning a title. Now, it can happen, as I said, on a night, like a random night basis in the postseason, sure. But if they're getting this caliber of play from him, they're going to be really, really difficult to beat, because I do expect Donovan Mitchell to be much better in the postseason than he's been lately. I'll be very curious to see what he looks like if he does play on Thursday against San Antonio. At this point, I don't know if it makes sense for him to play. Maybe give him Thursday off too and let him play Friday in Detroit. I don't know how the Cavs are going to operate there as he manages this groin injury, but I expect him to be much better in the postseason. I expect Evan Mobley to continue to be, and I'm going to talk about him coming up in a little bit, I expect him to be much better, or, you know, this same guy in the postseason. And then Garland's going to fit in behind those guys. But having a night like this just serves, I think, as a really good reminder of what exactly Darius is capable of here, because he ran the offense, and yes, he turned the ball over 5 times, and that's a number that's a little bit too high. But overall, I just thought that this was a great game. I do think it's something too that Darius probably needed a little bit. I think he needed to have this opportunity to go off to lead the Cavs to a win against a good team, and they won this game, you know, not solely because of him. Like, Evan Mobley was really good. Ty Jerome was awesome. But I thought that he was one of the biggest reasons they won this game. And I do think that that is not the most important thing in the world. This is still March basketball. Like, the results of these games, you know, not entirely inconsequential, but not the most consequential games that they have during the regular season. I think that's probably the fairest way to say it. But I do think that individual performances, and I talked about seeing Darius and Donovan have good games at the same time. Obviously, we didn't see that tonight because Donovan did not play. But I do think that this is kind of a step towards getting there, right? Like, seeing Darius Garland have a really good game, being really efficient, even if, again, it wasn't hitting threes, seeing him do those things and be that player. And sorry, he only had 4 turnovers, not 5. I looked at the wrong column. But seeing him do those things, seeing him be a leader, seeing him get to the basket, seeing him get to the floater, and seeing that start to drop much more frequently lately than it was earlier in the slump, that I think is the best sign to come out of the game for the Cavs. And they shot the ball better against Portland. Their shot diet was weird because they only took 27 threes, which is not who the Cavs have been. And I thought with Kenny Atkinson putting Sam Merrill into the starting lineup in place of Donovan Mitchell, and, you know, when I posted about that, there was a lot of pushback from people that just like, what is Kenny doing? Why is Sam Merrill in the starting lineup? And the best way I can kind of say it is the Cavs' biggest issue lately on the offensive end of the floor. And I wrote about this at the Inside Shot. It's been 3-point shooting. Like the Cavs went from being the best 3-point shooting team in basketball to, over their last 5 games before Tuesday night, the worst 3-point shooting team in basketball. They needed more from that area. So to see them only take 27 3-pointers in this game was something that was a little surprising, but I thought, okay, that's why Sam Merrill is in the game, because since February 1st, he's shooting around 43%. He's been really, really good. He made 4 threes. I thought he played a great game in his role against Portland. He did make a 5th three that got wiped out by a Jarrett Allen offensive screen. That was, it was the right call. Jarrett did not need to do it, but it was the correct call. But I thought that he was really good too. And I thought that was the right decision. Like, I thought that is what the Cavs needed. And part of the reason why I thought that was the right decision is because it kept Ty Jerome in his 6-man role. And Ty Jerome, just like Darius Garland, was a huge reason why the Cavs won this game. So we're going to talk about the night that Ty had. Plus, we're going to dive into some of the Evan Mobley defensive stuff next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time, and there's nothing like watching basketball live. I miss it, man. It's been really weird lately. One, I'm thrilled the Cavs are no longer on the West Coast, because recording these podcasts at 1:30 in the morning, maybe not my favorite thing in the world. And two, I've not seen a basketball game, an NBA game in person in what feels like forever. The Cavs have been gone for 10 days. It's been driving me nuts. And if you're a Cavs fan, it's probably driving you nuts that you haven't been able to go to a game lately. If you do live in Cleveland, well, lucky for you, the Cavs are going to be back in town this week, and you can go to a game. And the best way to get in the door is by using Game Time. Their new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out all the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. Maybe you want to go on Thursday when they're back in town. Maybe you can't on Thursday, but you want to go on Sunday when they get back in town. Again, Game Time is the place to go. And their Game Time Picks even highlights super deals, giving you the best bang for your buck. And their seat views before you buy let you know exactly what your views are going to look like. I think that is one of the best things about Game Time. Actually did use it last weekend on Friday because, of course, the Cavs played at 10 o'clock Eastern time. Man, I did stuff Friday night. I went to a comedy show in Playhouse Square. How did we get tickets? We used the Game Time app, and there were no surprise fees, and that lowest price guarantee always comes in clutch. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, if you're listening to the show wherever you get your podcasts, do me a favor, make sure you are subscribed and leave a nice review as well. And also make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Cavs daily newsletter, because it is your one stop for ultimate team and league coverage, and it is delivered right to your inbox. You can sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That is lockedondaily.com. Ty Jerome was fantastic in this game. I thought that this was one of the best games that he's had all season. And I know that he's had games with higher point totals than this. And I know that he had another great game that was kind of similar to this one against Portland when these two teams met in Cleveland a couple of weeks ago. But Ty finished with 25 points on 9 of 15 shooting, was 4 of 5 from 3, which was a really important thing because him and Sam Merrill combined to hit 8 threes. The rest of the Cavs only hit 4. Like, if you do want to point out a negative there, it's that one, so much of their 3-point volume came from 2 guys and that they only took 27 threes, but we're not going to do that. We're going to talk positive because this was, I thought, a nice win. But I thought that Ty really did a great job of dictating the way the game was played when he was on the floor. And the one knock I have on Darius's game on Tuesday, those 4 turnovers, Ty didn't have any. Now, Ty is much more of a or at least in this game, I think played much more of he was going to go get his own. And part of that is I think the way Portland was defending with him on the floor, they were, despite the fact that he lit them up last time, I think Portland was kind of playing him defensively. Like, if Ty Jerome's going to beat us, Ty Jerome's going to beat us. And, Ty has shown that he's good enough to do that. 25 points from him off the bench was massive. The fact that he hit 4 threes was massive. I thought that the control he had when he was on the floor was a really important thing, because you do, I think, always wonder, what do those minutes look like without one of the all-star guards on the floor? And when Donovan Mitchell is not playing, obviously you're going to have several minutes like that, because that's just what, Darius can't play all 48. But Ty, I think, has really done a good job of alleviating those concerns. And when the postseason arrives, those minutes are not going to exist. When both guys are healthy, those minutes really don't exist anyways. But on a one-night basis, or like in spots here and there, and Donovan is now missed. I think this is the 7th or 8th game that he's missed, and I do want to talk about that coming up in a little bit. Ty has stepped up when Darius has missed games, which have been few and far between. He's not missed very many games this year. Ty has stepped up. Like, he has routinely been ready for the challenge when he's asked to fill in and carry a heavier burden than just his regular role. And the fact that he's able to be so efficient, 15 shots in 20 minutes is a pretty, that's like on a permanent basis, that's pretty high volume. But he was so efficient, and he's able to get you spots, and he plays such an, I guess, unorthodox style of how he gets to the rim, and the way that he's able to slow down in a way that really few guys, I think, in the NBA play like that. I think makes him such a tougher cover for opposing defenses. And I really thought that was on full display against Portland. Like, there was one, and I don't remember who the defender was. It may have been Simons, or it may have been Henderson. I'm not sure. But the way that Ty just contorts his body to find these spaces that nobody else searches for, and then is able to get the ball up on the rim or up on the glass, like, it never ceases to impress me, because nobody else, and listen, Ty is obviously far from the most athletic guy in the league. He's not the best finisher in the league. Like, there's nothing about him that is like finds him in any superlative categories, but he's so unorthodox in the way that he gets it done that it's just like, that's a really good asset, I think, for the Cavs. Or, if he were on any other team, like, that is a huge asset, because, and I think part of the thing, and maybe I'll talk about the 6-man race and the defensive player of the year race tomorrow, but part of the thing that I think makes Ty so valuable coming off the bench, and why I think that his case for 6-man of the year should be considered to be a little bit stronger than it probably is I think he provides something in this role coming off the bench as this third ball handler or third guard, whatever you want to call it. I think he provides something that the Cavs don't otherwise have. And I think that's a really important thing when you look at the way the team is made up, when you look at the way that how some teams are going to defend Donovan, how some teams are going to defend Darius Garland, that might give those guys problems. And I think those guys will figure it out, because they're stars and that's what stars do. But having to specifically watch defenses try and game plan for Ty Jerome in the postseason, which will happen, is going to be a really interesting thing, because he does things not just differently than anyone else on his own team, but he does things differently than I think most guys in the league. Like, I sit here and I struggle to think of guys that have a finishing package that looks anything like Ty Jerome's. It's a really tough exercise. And maybe if I spend more time doing it when it's not 1:45 in the morning, I'll be better at it. But it's so interesting the way that he gets it done, the way that he contorts his body, the way that he downshifts from like third gear to second gear in the paint, how rarely his shot gets blocked. And of course, he's having such a fantastic shooting season. He was on pace to be a 50, 40, 90 guy. I don't think that's going to happen after some of the free throws that he hit earlier, or that he missed, earlier on this trip. But the fact that he's able to get into the paint and find ways to finish, as well as be able to hit catch and shoot threes at times, hit off the dribble threes at times. There was a three he hit on Tuesday over Donovan Mitchell where he had him in a switch, and he kind of got him moving backwards and then buried a three in his face. And it's like that's special stuff for a guy that one was a non-factor last year, played 15 minutes in 2 games, and two, like, just came out of nowhere to do this. And I think that is one of the special parts about this Cavs team. And I think there are so many things that are special about the way Ty Jerome plays. And I thought that all of them were on display on Tuesday night against the Blazers. Again, he had 25 points off the bench on 9 of 15 shooting. Cavs won his 20 minutes by 5 points over Portland. Didn't have the turnover, hit 4 threes. I thought that this was one of the, and I don't know how it's going to rate. Like if you go to the basketball reference game score, I don't know where this is going to stand in his games, but I thought that this was one of the best games, if not the best game that Ty has played this season. Maybe you could make the case for the game against Philly where he didn't miss a shot and made like 7 threes or whatever that ridiculous night was in one of the games the Cavs lost this year. But I thought overall it was really hard to be anything other than super impressed with what Ty Jerome did. Now, we have to talk about Evan Mobley. His Defensive Player of the Year odds have slipped. I thought Tuesday night was a great response by him on that end of the floor. We're going to dive into that, plus a little bit of his offensive game next right here on Locked On Cavs. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. If you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Evan Mobley finished the night against Portland with 21 points on 8 of 15 shooting. He did have 12 rebounds, 4 assists, and 4 block shots. And I thought the thing that stood out about his game was obviously the defense. I thought that he was terrific on that end of the floor. Now, I think the gripe probably that you're going to say is the way the Cavs rebounded the basketball, because Portland had 19 offensive rebounds. And that really is the only reason I thought this game was close, is because the Cavs took 88 shots and the Blazers took 101 shots. Like the Cavs held Portland below 40% from the floor, below 33% from 3-point range. They really didn't get to the free throw line a ton. They took 22 free throws, which is not some crazy figure like the last time we saw these two teams play where they combined to shoot 70 free throws. But I thought that what Evan did defensively in this game was wildly impressive. Some of the blocks that he had were awesome. It feels like he's everywhere. And I don't think that the number of block shots that he has on a given night are going to be things that necessarily do justice to how good of a defender he is. We see him switch out on the perimeter, and maybe, you want to say that teams are hunting him. I don't view it like that. I think that there are teams that are willing to live with Evan switched out on the perimeter as a defender, because he's not bad at that. It's not the thing he does best. Like Evan does, I think, a few things better than that defensively. I do think that he's a good defender in space on the perimeter, and I think that's part of the reason why he should be Defensive Player of the Year. But if I'm operating an offense, would I rather allow Evan Mobley to be in that roaming role where he can cause havoc both off the ball, near the basket, defend the rim? Is that what I would want? Or would I take my chances saying, hey, we're going to get this guy in isolation. Maybe he's going to get us. Maybe we're going to get him. I think, but he's not going to be able to affect the play in other ways. And I think if you are an opposing offense, that's probably one of the smartest ways to attack the Cavs. Of course, teams are still going to hunt Darius Garland. They're going to hunt Jared Allen on the perimeter, as the Cavs want to be very switchy. But if the Cavs have Evan Mobley at center, would you rather him be a help defender, or would you rather make him defend on the basketball? I think you'd rather make him defend on the basketball. Again, it's not because he's bad at defending on the basketball. Yes, there was the highlight that James Harden had against him, and DeMar DeRozan hit some really tough jumpers against him earlier this week. Has Evan had the best defensive week of his career? Probably not. But he's not all of a sudden some guy that teams are going to want to hunt out because they think he's a bum as a defender. No, it's because would you rather have Evan Mobley defend in space, which the answer for every 7-footer in the world is yes. There's not a 7-footer that you look at and say, I don't want that guy in space. Evan's going to win some of those matchups. Evan's going to lose some of those matchups, but his winning percentage in those matchups is going to be lower than his winning percentage on possessions as a help defender, because that's the thing that he does best at. The way that I view it, and Portland tried to do this a little bit. I don't think they had a ton of success with it, but the way that I view it is, well, how do we get this guy doing the thing, or how do we stop this guy from doing the thing he does best defensively? And I think that is the answer that teams have found. Is that an answer that's going to lead to success? I don't know. But I think that he's good enough that the Cavs should be willing to live with that. It's just that other teams would much rather have him in those spots than having him defending the rim. I think that's what a lot of this is, because earlier this season, and I thought that this has been pretty prevalent in a few games, but there have been, in the most recent Atlanta game is the one that really sticks out to me. But Evan switched on to, in that game, Trae Young a ton of times on the perimeter, if you go back and watch it. So Evan switches on to Trae a bunch, and Trae couldn't get the ball out of his hands fast enough. Now, Trae is obviously a smaller guard. Evan has quite a size advantage. And Trae's not having the best shooting season of his career. I mean, he's been really good as a distributor, but as a scorer, he has struggled compared to his career norms. But it really said something to me that this guy, Trae Young, who believes that he should be an all-NBA caliber guard, whether he is or not is a different discussion, but that's what he thinks of himself. So typically, when a guy like that has a 7-footer switched on to him, he's going to want to try and score on him, because that is something viewed as a mismatch. We've seen teams approach it as, no, Evan switches out on the perimeter. Let's get the ball somewhere else, because that does mean then that, one, Evan is maybe not as near the basket, but it also means we don't want to challenge him. The other route is to challenge him and try and make him defend on the perimeter, which, again, he's capable of doing. It's not the thing that he does best, but it does take him away from doing the thing that he does best. And Portland tried both strategies. Neither strategy worked for them in this game. I mean, he had 4 block shots. Some of them were as a primary defender. Some of them were as a help defender. Offensively, like, he continues to impress. And I know it wasn't the most efficient night. He scored 21 points on 15 shots. Didn't hit a 3. Missed 2 free throws, and his free throw shooting has not been great lately. But overall, like, the and one that he had where he just put his shoulder into Denny Avdia's chest and finished over him for a 2-handed dunk. Like, I don't know how you can watch what he's done this year and be anything other than super impressed. I think at this point, and maybe we'll have to see how some other players shake out in terms of games played, I think Evan is very firmly in the conversation to be not an all-NBA player. Like, I think at this point it's a lock he is an all-NBA player, but I think he's very firmly right now on the second team. That's not necessarily going to mean that he finishes as a second-team all-NBA player, but if the season ended today, I think that's probably where he would be, and he deserves that. Like, what he's done on both ends of the floor, particularly the transformation that he's made offensively, has been crazy impressive. Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching this video on YouTube, before we get out of here, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I'll be back tomorrow talking more about the Cavs.